Okay, let's get into this. $210 million. I mean, that's the number everyone remembers from the multi-chain hack back in 2023.
A huge figure, yeah. Hard to forget.
And today, we're diving into what's happening now. There's been a pretty significant court decision, right? Something that could really matter for getting that money back.
Absolutely. Hot off the press, actually. There's a Cointelegraph report, dropped less than an hour ago, detailing a ruling from the Singapore High Court. So yeah, this is current.
Happening right now. Okay, so our mission really is to unpack this, cut through the legal speak, and figure out what this ruling actually means, for the chances of recovering those, frankly, eye-watering sums.
Exactly. Where do things stand now?
So let's start there. The Singapore High Court, what was the decision?
Okay, so the main point is this.
Yeah.
The court sided with Sonic Labs. You might remember them as the Fantom Foundation. They rebranded.
Right, Sonic Labs.
Yeah. And the court granted their petition to wind up the Multichain Foundation. The actual judgment came down on May 9th.
Wind up. That sounds final. What does that actually mean in, legal terms? Yeah. And why did Sonic Labs push for this so hard?
Good question. So winding up is basically the formal process to dissolve the Multichain Foundation. Think of it like, well, somewhat similar to bankruptcy proceedings for a company.
Okay.
As for why Sonic Labs went this route, their CEO, Michael Kong, was pretty blunt about it. He said they basically hit a wall. Former Multichain employees were apparently impossible to deal with, actively hiding, not cooperating at all with victims.
Wow. So complete obstruction.
That seems to be the picture painted, yeah. That lack of cooperation looks like the main driver behind forcing this legal winding up process.
So the court agrees, orders the winding up. What happens next? How does this potentially lead to getting, some of that $210 million back to the people who lost it?
Right. This is the key step. Liquidators get appointed. In this case, the court has brought in KPMG.
KPMG, the big accounting firm.
Exactly. Their job now is to manage this whole winding up process. They'll try to identify any assets the Multichain Foundation still holds, figure out where funds might have gone, and look at legal options for recovery.
So they're like financial detectives, basically.
In a way, yes. Kong mentioned that these liquidators can now start working with other stakeholders, other victims perhaps, to try and claw back assets. But, and this is really important, this is just the start of what could be a very long legal battle.
Okay.
Getting any actual money back to users, that's, well, still very much up in the air. Depends entirely on how successful these legal proceedings are.
Right. So no guarantees, but it's a formal, court-approved attempt to see what's recoverable. Let's rewind quickly just to set the scene again. The hack itself, July 2023, what went down?
Yeah, July last year. It started with reports of just abnormally large amounts of money flowing out of Multichain. Looked very suspicious. Yep. And it was quickly confirmed. A major hack, a security breach that hit several big blockchains using Multichain's bridge. We're talking Fantom, Ethereum, BNB Chain, Cronos, Polygon.
So multiple chains, big names involved. And the scale, we mentioned $210 million. That wasn't just a guess, right?
No, that figure comes from reports around August 2023. Blockchain security firm Beosin and Fantom themselves estimated the total losses across all those chains were at least $210 million.
Yeah.
So yeah, massive.
Gives you a sense of why Sonic Labs is pushing so hard. Now, this winding up petition, it didn't just appear out of thin air, did it? Sonic Labs had some legal history with Multichain already.
That's right. This builds on a previous win. Back in January of this year, 2024, Sonic Labs actually won a default judgment against Multichain, also in the Singapore High Court.
A default judgment, meaning Multichain didn't really fight it.
Seems that way. And that earlier case was specifically about breach of contract and, interestingly, fraudulent misrepresentations. It related to about $122 million of Multichain's funds.
Okay, so they'd already established legally that something was wrong regarding a huge chunk of the money. What did Sonic Labs say they planned to do after winning that first case?
Well, after that January win, they stated pretty clearly, I think it was back in March, that their next step was exactly this, petitioning for the full winding up of the Multichain Foundation.
Ah, so this was the plan all along.
It looks like it. The goal they stated then was to get liquidators involved, KPMG as we now know, to try and recover whatever assets could be found or were maybe frozen somewhere. And importantly, they also wanted this process to open the door for other victims to file their claims too.
Right, create a formal process for everyone affected. Makes sense. They seem quite methodical about this. What about Multichain itself? What's been going on with them since the hack? Are they even operational?
Well, no. Not really. Multichain essentially ceased operations back in July 2024, so about a year after the hack.
Okay.
They cited two main reasons. One, pretty obvious lack of operational funds after losing so much money. And two, this is crucial, their CEO, this guy Zhao Jun, was reportedly detained by Chinese police.
Detained? Wow. Okay, that obviously complicates things massively.
Hugely. It makes getting answers, cooperation, or any kind of orderly recovery directly from the company basically impossible.
So putting all these pieces together, this latest court ruling, the winding up order, what's the main takeaway for you listening?
I think the key thing is that this court order is a genuinely significant step. It might feel slow, but it's progress in this incredibly complicated effort to recover funds from the 2023 hack.
A formal step forward.
Yes. Appointing KPMG means there's now an official legal process underway to dig into Multichain's finances and explore ways to get assets back. But, and I have to stress this again, expectations need to be managed.
Right.
Actually seeing money returned to users.
Yeah.
It's still a long shot. It completely depends on how successful KPMG and these future legal actions are. And that involves navigating potentially complex issues across different countries, different legal systems.
Okay, understood. So, quick recap then. Big news is the Singapore court ordering Multichain to be wound up. KPMG are in as liquidators. Their job, try to find and recover some piece of that $210 million pie. But it's going to be a long road.
That's the gist of it, yes. And stepping back, this whole saga really throws a spotlight on the challenges, doesn't it? Applying old-school legal processes like bankruptcy and liquidation to these new decentralized, often borderless crypto protocols.
Yeah, it's like fitting a square peg in a round hole sometimes. We're watching traditional law trying to catch up with DeFi and these huge cross-chain hacks. It really does make you pause and think about the bigger picture, right? When digital money gets stolen and potentially spread across, dozens of wallets on different blockchains, maybe held by people in different countries, how do victims even begin to seek justice or get their funds back? It feels like a legal nightmare.
It really does.
Okay.
And maybe this is something for you, the listener, to mull over. Considering how decentralized and global crypto is, are court orders in just one country, like Singapore here, enough? Or do we need other mechanisms, maybe new international agreements, or maybe even tech-based solutions built into the protocols themselves to better protect people when these massive hacks happen? What else could possibly ensure accountability and offer a realistic path to recovery in this space?
That's a really potent question to end on, where technology, law, and user protection collide. Definitely something to think about.